interview is with Mr. Howard Miller. We are at the Miller Airport, which is on Highway 150, just outside of Mooresville. This is Mr. Miller's home, original home, and also the airport where he houses his planes. We thank you, Mr. Miller, for coming today. Today is March the 19th, 2009. And Mr. Miller, where were you born?
Actually, right near here, about 300 feet from where we are. There's a small house, and my siblings and I were all born in that same house.
So this was your family, was it farm?
It was a family farm.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 5 children, and I'm one of the youngest. There were twins. My twin brother and I were the last to come along in 1926.
Okay. And where did you go to school?
We started to school across the street here. There was a 2-room schoolhouse called Centenary School. It's associated with the Centenary Methodist Church out here, and which was a neighborhood church. And it was a 2-room schoolhouse with 4 grades in each room. In the first room, it was the first grade, and you could start when you were 5 years old. And the second, it was just a row that 5 kids sit on. And that was the first grade. Then the second row had about 5 seats on it, and that was the high first, which most people had never heard of. And then you had the second grade and the third grade. That was 4 grades.
So it took you 2 years to get out of the first grade.
Exactly, 2 years to get out of the first grade. So, and then the next room was taught by Louise Felk, and she had the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade.
And then from 7th you went to
Mount Olive School.
Mount Olive School.
Started there in 5th grade.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so you graduated from Mount Olive, and did you go on into aviation at that point?
Actually, the war started in 1941, and my twin brother and I were interested in going in service, but we couldn't go at that time because we were not old enough. But in 1943, we were 17 years old, and we investigated going into the aviation cadet program from the Army Air Force. Back then they called it the Army Air Corps. And so they gave us some tests and passed us both, but they wouldn't take us until we were 18 years old and had graduated from Mount Olive High School. And we were due to graduate in May of 44. We graduated on May 28th and went into service on June 28th in the cadet program. And when we enlisted in August of 17th, 1943, there were 60 B-17s lost that day over Berlin. And the need projected for pilots was tremendous. So that's why they were recruiting even in the high schools. So that's how we got started.
And where did they send you for your aviation training?
Okay, well, there was a lot of induction going on, and they kept giving you tests to see if you were good material to be a pilot. And we were inducted at Fort Bragg, and they washed out a few of the boys on the physical there. And then they shipped us out to Wichita Falls, Texas for basic training. And they gave us some more tests there, and they washed out some more of our boys. And so we ended up with a group of 200 of us. And Harold and I were still in the upper group. We had always studied airplanes, and the questions, a lot of the questions were aviation questions. So we managed to stay in that program okay.
Yeah, well, you had been interested in aviation from the time you were a small child?
Yes. We were born in 1926, and Lindbergh flew that first trip to Paris in May of 1927. And there was a lot of interest began to build up throughout the United States. And when Harold and I were about 6 years old, our dad bought us each a little, really well-constructed Lindbergh airplane that we could play with and not tear up. And we played with that airplane for years, and often wondered what happened to it. I'd like to have it back, but that was our first interest.
So okay, so now you're inducted into the Army Air Corps, and you're going to go for your flight training. And where was that?
Well, as the war, when we went in June of '44, the invasion was June 6th, and the idea before the invasion was to take down as much of the German Air Force that they could, and the Army Air Force was very successful in getting the German Air Force down because they didn't want them coming out on the beaches, and they didn't. They were very one or two airplanes, and there's hundreds and hundreds of American airplanes. So the need for pilots was not as great after that invasion, and they extended our time in service, and they gave us permanent party jobs to take up our times, and they shipped us down to Big Spring, Texas, and they give us a job like working on the line, the flight line, helping the mechanics work on Twin Beaches, and we helped run them up and get them ready to go flying. So we were there about 4 months, and then they shipped us up to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and they gave me a little different job. I became a physical training instructor, and Harold, my twin, became a military policeman. So
did you ever actually get to fly in the war?
Not as pilot, only as passenger.
Only as a passenger.
Yeah. And but when we were in Big Spring, the pilots would ask us to go with them and fly in the seat and look for other airplanes or something like that. Mm-hmm. So we did get to fly in the airplanes. We got to run them up and get familiar with them. Mm-hmm. And this program was extended and extended until there was really no need for pilots anymore, and they discharged us after the war.
It was pretty much toward the end of the war.
It was pretty much toward the end of the war, right. Mm-hmm.
And then you were where were you discharged?
Actually, we were Chinook Field, Illinois, and our time in service was over 2 years, because they counted our time from the time we enlisted in 1943, and even our GI Bill time, and we were both discharged in October of 1945, and decided to investigate going to using our GI Bill to go to a flight school and a mechanic school. We checked out a school in Pittsburgh and one in Florida, Embry-Riddle in Florida, and Northrop School in California, and there was one in Texas, and there was one in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Spartan School of Aeronautics. We liked that material better than any of it. So he and I both enlisted, enrolled to go through a mechanic course there, an aviation mechanic course. But they also offered that we could go through private pilot ground school if we wanted to go to school in the evenings. So he and I enrolled in that also. And so that program was a year long, and you could start in the airplane part of it. That meant just the fuselage and the wings, or you could be an engine mechanic and go through that part. And Harold and I talked it over, and they wanted us to buy books were like $200 for each one of us. So we decided, let's buy one set of books, and one go through the aircraft school and the other go through the engine school, and that way we saved some money. So that saved us money. And in 6 months, I had an aircraft mechanic license, and he had an aircraft engine license. And we got interested in surplus airplanes, and we found out that they were selling surplus Army Air Corps trainers in Arkansas, right close to Tulsa. So there was several students piled in a 1941 DeSoto, and we drove to this Thompson Robins Army Air Corps training field, and there were hundreds of training airplanes there. And they used one kind of airplane. It was a Fairchild PT-23 with a radial engine on it. And they said, boys, they gave us a little talk and said, we got airplanes out there priced from $382, the cheapest. And we've got some that had just been delivered last week for $1,500. Well, nobody in our group had $1,500. Hal and I together had $600 because we had worked one summer in the cotton mill in Mooresville, and we'd save $300 apiece. And we decided to use that money to buy our first airplane. And we looked around and we kept finding this one airplane that had the fabric on it was bad on the side of the fuselage only. And everybody else would look at it and they'd say, oh, the fabric is too bad on that one. But it had metal seats in it, and all of the rest of the trainers had wooden seats. And there was a section behind the cockpit that was metal. And Harold and I liked the way that was built. And we finally looked at some many others that didn't look as good as that one. So we decided, and I had just finished a open fabric course, that I could cover that airplane if I had a little place to do it. And that's the one we picked and bought. We didn't even know how to fly it. Out of that group of boys, there were 3 of those PT-23 sold that day. That was March of 1946. And the guy that owned the car bought one. So I was elected to drive the car back. Harold was elected to fly in the airplane with one of the pilots that didn't buy an airplane. He flew it back, and he gave Harold some flying lessons going back. So we got it back to Tulsa, and I drove the DeSoto back. And we found a little hangar where we rented, and were able to work on this airplane on the weekends and at night. And in a couple of months, we had it ready to go. It was just a beautiful airplane with new fabric. And we found out the engine only had 7 hours total time on it, like a new engine. So we had like a new airplane. And some of our friends were flight instructors. They gave us flight instructions from Solos Aspera in Oklahoma. And we were student pilots, supposed to be under influence of an instructor, but we got one out and flew most any time we wanted to. And our 2-week vacation time was coming up in June, a couple of weeks after we got our airplane flying. So we wanted to fly it back to North Carolina. And one of our best friends was a lead navigator on a B-17 in World War II. And he says, we told him what we wanted to do, and he said, boys, I'll help you plot your course and give you a little ground school on how to go in out of the different airports. And so he plotted the course for us. We bought 2 sets of maps. So one in the front cockpit could talk to the other guy in the back, and he'd keep talking about, well, where are we now, But the instructions were so good, and we had finished our pilot ground school that we were really pretty sharp on it. But we'd never been on a cross country, and we started off, our first trip was 1,000 miles. And we started up during the day. There was no radios on the airplane. When you taxied down in Tulsa, you had to get a green flashing light to taxi to the active runway, which there was an indicator in the middle of the airport called a wind tee, and you taxi toward the runway that used that runway. And then when you got ready for takeoff, you would face the tower, and they'd be looking at you through field glasses. And you'd wiggle your ailerons, and he would see your ailerons wiggle, and you were up next to the runway, and he'd flash you a steady green light for takeoff. So we took off there in Tulsa using the green light because we didn't have radios. Most planes didn't have radios then, except maybe the airliners and some of the larger corporate airplanes. So we flew to Forest City, Arkansas, and our navigation was just, it was really good. But when you start out from Tulsa in 1946, you were pretty much out in the prairies until you got to another big city. And our friend Rusty had told us that, said, whatever you do, boys, don't vary off your course. Just stay on that course. And he drew a line, and every 25 miles he'd put a little cross mark. And he'd say, now, you write down what time you take off, and the airplane goes about 100 miles an hour. And when you pass that 25-mile mark, you look around and see what towns or railroads or whatever is there. And so we passed that 25-mile mark, and we hadn't seen anything we recognized. But Harold and I would say, well, we just stay on that course. And he told us to correct if we saw we were drifting off course. In a little bit, I saw a town coming up on the right, and I began to look at my map, and Harold was looking at his, and I finally thought to myself, I believe that's Muskogee, Oklahoma. And a little bit, Harold called me on the earphone, and he said, I think that's Muskogee, Oklahoma. I said, yeah, I think it is too. And from that point on, our navigation was just really perfect, because we flew right into Forest City, Arkansas, and we swapped seats, and I flew from the front seat then. He flew the first leg. Our second stop was at Murfreesboro, Tennessee. We carried the 46 gallons of gas, and you were good for about 4 hours, so you could really fly about 3 hours with an hour reserve. So I flew the next leg into Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and that worked out quite well. And we swapped seats again. And it's getting late in the day, so we flew the next leg to Knoxville and landed at a little airport called Island Airport in the middle of the French Broad River near Knoxville. And so we told the people we need to spend the night there, and so they took us to a little nearby place that had a room for rent. We slept in the same bed, and we spent the night there. And the next morning, we got our airplane ready, fueled up and ready to go. And Rusty had told us, and now we can't plot a course straight across the mountains because you don't want to be flying across Mount Mitchell. So he said, now you follow the French Broad River around to Asheville. And when you get to Asheville, you turn east and go by Old Fort. And from Old Fort, I'm going to draw you a line right down to the farm. And he did. And that's the way my brother Harold flew that trip. And, no, it was me. I flew that trip. The last leg, because Harold flew the first. And we got to Mooresville. Everything just worked out just fine. And we decided we could land here on this farm field. At the time, it wasn't near as long as it is now. But we had no problem with it. And we landed, and we were here about a week and a half on our vacation. And so that was the start of our flying career.
So yes, so that was the beginning of your flying career. So,
Yeah.
So tell us about your flying career from that point on.
Well, we began to realize that, we'd been in this GI school there in Oklahoma, and there were not very many GI flight schools around, and we thought, well, it'd be nice if we had a GI flight school. But by that time we had our private license. And Salisbury had an approved school, and then the next one nearest was Charlotte. And then there was one in Winston-Salem. And we decided to build this hangar first. And so we ourselves got some people to help us cut the trees and figure out how much lumber we needed. So we cut the lumber off of our farm here. And we had it sawed at a sawmill, and it had a kill dryer so they could dry it. You didn't have to wait for it to cure on its own. And they put it in a kill dryer, and there was a local man that built our barn for us here, and we asked him could he build this hangar, and we made a little small drawing of this hangar, which is 60 feet opening. And it's 60 feet deep and 40-foot opening on the front. So we drew this hangar that you see right there, and he said, yeah, I can build that. And so we said we had enough money for him to build it, Harold, Jimmy, and I. And so he started building it, finished it up, and we had everything but the roof done. And so we didn't have enough money to finish the roof, and our mother says, I'll pay for the roof. And she paid $2,000 for that first roof. And it was a really good one. And that roof has lasted 62 years, and they're replacing that roof right now. So we'll have a new roof. And anyway, we made application in Charlotte to at that time called the Civil Aeronautics Authority for an airstrip approval here to serve Mooresville and Rowan County and Iredell County, and they approved it. And then we were put on the map as Miller Municipal Airport, Miller Brothers Municipal Airport, because it served the public at that time. And then we made an application with the Civil Aeronautics Authority in Charlotte, which is now called the Federal Aviation Agency, FAA. We asked for an application for a flight school, and they gave us approval for a basic flight school, which you could teach students and private pilots. And then for an advanced flight school, which you could teach flight instructors, commercial pilots, and multi-engine if you wanted to. So we had that approval. And then my twin brother Harold made it his job to go to the Veterans Administration and make application for a Veterans Administration approved school here, and they approved it in a few weeks. So we had an approved flight school by the CAA, Civil Aeronautics Authority, and an approved school for veterans. Mooresville was full of veterans. So we had 2 Cubs and that PT-23, and we started our flight school here. We hired 2 flight instructors. One was a local boy, Frank Mara, and the other was Bill Short from Hickory. And we hired Woody Wisner, who had married a local girl here. He was a veteran, and he was a ground school instructor. So he became our ground school instructor.
So you actually, so this was a school. I didn't realize.
It was an approved school.
Approved school, and how long did you run it as a flight school?
Harold and I ran it till 1950 through 1953, and then we left, and Jimmy ran it as a flight school for the rest of his life.
Okay. So I see you have a Piedmont hat on. I know that you work for Piedmont, what used to be Piedmont Airlines. Tell us about how that happened.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about Statesville. People knew how successful we were with the school down here, and as the school got more students and more students, we bought more surplus airplanes because you could buy airplanes really cheap then. And we set up a maintenance place here because all these airplanes needed maintenance, and Harold and I did all the maintenance. We were mechanics. And Harold went ahead and got his flight instructor rating in 1948, and I got my flight instructor next, and Jimmy got his after that. So we were all 3 flight instructors, and one of our flight instructors wanted to go to work for a cargo airline called Flying Tiger, and Frank Mara did leave us and went with Flying Tiger Airline, flying cargo all over the world. And some of our students became flight instructors, and they got jobs at different places. Well, Statesville called us to see if we would take over their municipal airport there, serving Iredell County and Statesville. And we said, yeah, we'll do that. So we actually had schools here and at Statesville. And that was real successful. We bought more airplanes and surplus airplanes, used airplanes, which were really good. And we maintained them quite well. And we had lots of students here. And most of our students were young guys, 20, 21 years old, right out of service, and they would come to work, they'd come to fly, and they'd wear some of the Army clothes, because in this area, right after World War II, you had those good wool clothes, and they were good in the cockpits, flying the open cockpit airplanes. So I have pictures of some of our students standing in front of the airplanes with flying helmets on, and their old GI uniforms. Part uniforms. And so Harold and I began to investigate the possibility of going with Piedmont Airlines, so we needed an instrument flying course, and Piedmont Aviation offered that course in Winston-Salem. He and I signed up for it, and we did quite well on that instrument course, and they offered us a job. They said, we can put you in the next class. We said, we can't come to the next class because we have a contract at Statesville that runs out on December 31st, 1953. And so they said, well, we'll put you in a class after that. So they called us to go to work in April of 1954. And that was a good career up. I was there 31 years, and my twin brother Harold was there 21 years. He developed a brain tumor, it was cancer, and he died in 1975 at age 49.
So this was kind of the beginnings of Piedmont Airlines, isn't it?
It was the beginning, yeah. We had, but Piedmont operated like we did. They didn't have a whole surplus at that time they called them military cargo airplanes C-47. What veterans jumped out of? Well, they were developed from a DC-3 airliner which was developed in 1935. And Piedmont Airlines had an approved ground maintenance station, and they could convert those airplanes themselves. So they got a lot of them and converted them. And then some of the bigger airlines like United and American, and there's one called Colonial Airlines that we bought 2 airplanes from. And so we started off using those airplanes at Piedmont. Piedmont was 6 years old when Harold and I went to work there. And I was the 126th pilot, and he was the 127th. And when we went to work, they said, boys, we give out seniority here by the day you were born, and so we have to ask you which one of you were born first. And Harold said, well, Howard was born first. We didn't realize what seniority was. And Zeke Saunders says, okay, Howard, you get the first seniority number. You're 126. And Harold, you get the next seniority number. You're 127. And Harold said, wait a minute, I think I made a mistake. So that worked out okay. And then he said, Zeke said, well, boys, I noticed you haven't put any middle name down on your applications. And then he says, do you have a middle name or a middle initial? We both said, no, Mr. Saunders, we don't. He said, we were twins and Mom only gave us one name. He says, well, around here, when you get your paycheck, it's by your initial and your last name. And we can't give out 2 paychecks with the same initial and last name. He says, I'll give you both a middle initial. And he says, Harold, we're going to give you the second letter of your first name. And you'll be H.A. Miller. That'll be your initials. And Howard will give you the second letter of your first name. You'll be H.O. Miller. We thought, yeah, that's really neat. And then until some of the guys started saying, which one are you? Are you Ho or Ha? So that's how we got started with Piedmont. But they had to send us through the ground school there, which we were familiar with the ground school, and we did quite well in ground school. And with the flying, we did well with that also. And we settled into a good career flying the DC-3 for several years. And so we worked 6 months, and Piedmont at that time would have a winter schedule and a summer schedule. We didn't realize we were hired for that summer schedule. And in the fall, this Hurricane Hazel was coming through North Fairbanks. And we had a good experience. And Harold was offered a position flying a twin aircraft. And I was offered a position to fly a twin aircraft for S&W flying to Queensland. And it paid quite well, actually. We made more money there than we did with Piedmont.
6 months and 6 months with
No, that was it. And we both got called back in the next spring. And they called us back off those airplanes, and we started flying the DC-3s again. We never got furloughed again, but in 1959, we had sort of a little recession, and they had to cut the flights back. And they were going to have to furlough a lot of boys. And they said, if anyone here has a job they can go to, it's say furloughing people. And Mr. Saunders came to me and said, Krispy Kreme Donut needs a pilot to fly the brand new twin B. I said, Howard, do you want that? I said, yeah, Mr. Saunders, I'll take that. And so they paid me, but I was on the still Piedmont employee. And Harold had been doing some part-time flying over at Burlington Industries. So they called him and said, would he get Harold to come over there and fly for him? So we went for him. That saved furloughing 2 people on Piedmont Airlines. And it was quite good for us to do that. And we made some extra inroads there. Actually, Burlington tried to hire my twin brother Harold as chief pilot. And he said, no, and Krispy Kreme wanted to hire me as chief pilot. So I learned that. By this time, we were in Barton Fords, which was a nice airplane. 44-passenger airplane, pressurized, air conditioned. And the DC-3 they were not pressurized, they were not air conditioned. And it rained a great deal of fun. So it was a real pleasure to get in that Martin 404. These were began to sell this Martin 404 surplus. And we bought two of them. And TWA got rid of all the Martins because they were getting jets and things like that. So Piedmont bought all of the Transport Airlines Martin 404s. And we converted those and painted Piedmont Airlines on them. It was a tremendously good airplane. Wonderful. And a good airplane fighter. It would go into any airport we went into. Because some of the fields we went into they didn't have a lot of runway, but they were long enough. Like Bluefield and Beckley and...
You went to a lot of what we would consider smaller airports.
Yeah, like Rocky Mount, North Carolina. We served there. And we went to Florence, South Carolina, Columbia. And eventually it expanded on out. And then later on, there was a position come open as a captain in Roanoke, Virginia. And I bid that. I had the bottom bid on the system, and Harold was still a co-pilot because he didn't have enough seniority. But there was a bid come open to fly for the Norfolk and Western Railway Company, and the requirement was that the pilot had to have an aircraft and engine mechanic license, and Harold had that. So he bid that position and had it for 8 years. And I was a pilot there for about 4 years with Piedmont, and then they asked me to be chief pilot. And I was chief pilot and base manager for all the flight crews in Roanoke for 4 years. And in that 4 years, your thing was to train pilots, give flight checks. And sometimes they brought pilots from other places that you had to train also. Because we ended up with all of the Martin 404s in Roanoke. And so we had a lot of Roanoke pilots flying the Martins. And then Piedmont began to get the jets. And Harold and I wanted to get on the jets. So our seniority allowed us to go ahead and bid on the Boeing jets, which was the Boeing 737. It was a 90-passenger airplane, cruised like 585 miles an hour, and flying a lot more places and bigger airports. So he and I both bid that, and we won on that several years. He left his job after 8 years with Norfolk and Western and come back to Piedmont. And so we were both settled down in Winston-Salem, and that's where we finished our career. Harold retired or died in 1975, and then Jimmy died in 1979. So we had this little airport here, and his wife ended up owning it. But I owned the farm across the road here, and I also owned the one over here. And I talked to his wife. I said, Rena, we want to keep this airport as a Miller airport. And can we combine land and survey it? We'll survey lots and sell lots here. And she said, yeah, that'll suit her. So we traded land, and I bought this first lot is number one with the big hangar on it. And Bill Lofton, who lives on the airport here, bought the second one. And then it went from there. And I only have one lot left that I could sell as a lot where you can have a runway access. But we have 20 homes that can get on the runway, have hangars. They all have 20 hangars, and we've got 20 airplanes. And then we have some homes that join this part of this airport. And there's a lot of airline people live here, mechanics and pilots, and we've got 2 doctors that are here. There's a lady that flies here that works for Northwest Airlines, and so it's just a good atmosphere.
Tell us about this plane.
Okay, this is a 1946 Piper J3, and it came out was built with a 65 horsepower engine. And in 1946, and when Piper started out after World War II, they thought everybody would be flying, so they wanted 2 factories. There was a home factory that was in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, and they built another factory near Tulsa, Oklahoma. and that's where this airplane was built, near Tulsa. And there was Piedmont bought it, and then they sold it to a man, Foy Johnson, who runs a little, or at that time he ran a little grocery store near Elkin at Bailey's Crossroad. And my twin brother was single, and he used to stop in there because Foy had about 4 girls, and they were all good-looking girls. And he'd go see those girls, and Foy said one day, Harold, why don't you and Howard buy this Cub? Well, that was 1952 we bought this Cub, and at that time there were so many surplus airplanes on the market that the market for Cubs was you could buy one for $500. And we said, well, Mr. Johnson, how much money do you want for this Cub? He said, well, I think $500, that's about what they're bringing, so that's what we paid for this Cub. It sold in 1936 for $1,975. And on today's market, in good condition like this, this one has been refurbished for £7. This fabric on this airplane, it's a metal tubing fuselage with wood runners on the side. And it's fabric, it's like an engine. And then you fabric and dope it just like you do a little model airplane. And the last cover job on this was over 20 years ago, and I did that. And I like doing it.
Do you take it up and fly?
I do, yeah. In fact, we'll probably fly today. And it's got an 80, we put a bigger engine in it. It's got 85 horsepower. It's got a 12-gallon gas tank that runs about 3 hours. So it's got about 2 hours. It takes about 80 miles an hour. And it's just a good thing to fly. Fuel now is Landis fuel, which I know some people burn on. And it's fuel to burn. It's got to burn. It's worth burning. That's what we do. And it's $2.80. So you don't cry as often. Especially since you just done it.
Well, now, after Piedmont, I know you tried to Piedmont in your career at the end. Did you give some charters for maybe some other things?
Well, yeah, Piedmont used to charter some of the big airplanes, and the 727s. I ended up flying the Boeing 727, which was a really good airplane. They carried about 100, at that time they had 120 seats in them. And we used to have this company that called us for charter every year. And I always bid it. And it was the United Coal Company out of Bristol, Virginia. And so I got to make a plan. I've seen every year flying skyscrapers and it's customers. And a lot of these are employees. We'd stay out there for about 3 or 4 days and then fly home. And he'd come up and talk to me. He says, I'm going to buy a Boeing one of these days, and I'd like you to fly it. I said, I'd love to fly it after I retire. I said, give me a call after I retire. Well, I retired in 1981, and I have 3 boys that I had taught to fly when I was 16 years old, and they all did quite well. One went in the Air Force. The oldest, Joe, went to his flight instructor. Tom, the second son, he stayed here for 4 years with an engineering degree under a scholarship, and he was an Air Force pilot for 7 years. And he called one day and said, Dad, I want to go work for Piedmont. I said, well, Tom, we have a nepotism rule here, and I'm not 58 years old, and I don't want to retire yet. He said, well, I'm ready to get out. I said, well, come home and let him interview you. And he did. He came home, and Piedmont vice president interviewed Tom, and of course he had 7 years in the Air Force flying Hercules C-130s, and he had the engineering degree from NC State, and he interviewed well, and he looked good. And he came out and told me, he said, I will hire him when you retire. I said, well, how about if I retire a year early? He said, yeah, that'll cost you 10% on your retirement. I said, I can live with that. So I retired in January 19th of 1985, and they put Tom on the seniority list the next week on January 23rd. And that's when he's been since 1985. He's the captain now and flies all over the country in the Airbus, which is made in Europe. Joe, the oldest boy, was hired by U.S. Airways, and he's the captain on the Airbus also. Well, those two airlines finally merged, and so our two boys are working for the same airline now. Also, we have son Perry, who lives in the airport. Maybe like the greatest part of it, because he is in maintenance with doing his work in Charlotte. So that's pretty good to go. And I'm real proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you should be.
Yeah.
So you started flying charters for this company after you retired.
Yes. And they did buy a 727, and I flew it. I flew one back to Tennessee, and they put it up for sale and made quite a bit of money on it. And they said, we're going to get another one. So I came back home, and they looked around, and about that time, some of the oil companies were having a hard time, and there was an oil company in Houston had bought a 727 down in Orlando, Florida, and they were renovating it, and it was almost finished. So they made an offer on it of $3.75 million on this corporate 727 with a nice interior. It had a burlwood table, like a boardroom in the back cabin, 25 seats. We took out all the seats and we put extra gas tanks in one of the baggage compartments, and we could fly overseas with it. So we ended up buying that airplane, and then they hired me as chief pilot on it, and we flew it to Europe, we flew it to China, Beijing, China, Australia, New Zealand. I made 36 trips across the Atlantic with that airplane, and made 6 across the Pacific, going into Tokyo. And so that worked out good there. And after I'd been there about a year, they began to let the airplane sit, 2 weeks or a month at a time. And someone had called and wanted to lease the airplane, and it was the entertainment industry. So finally Neil Diamond contacted United Coal, and they called me. We were on a trip somewhere, and said, would you and your crew be interested in flying Neil Diamond on a 6-week tour? And I said, yes, I will. I'll check and see if the other crew will do it. Of course, they were glad to. We had 3 stewardesses and had 5 other pilots that we could put on the airplane if we needed to. So we did that, and we flew Neil Diamond on a 6-week tour, which started out in Oklahoma City and came through North Carolina here, and we ended up in New York. And that was a great tour. I loved flying Neil Diamond.
He was what kind of person was he?
Great person. Neil was concerned about flying in private airplanes because he had heard accidents about some of the movie stars getting killed in private airplanes. And when we picked him up in Oklahoma City, it was snowing. And but I was checking that, and I had flown in there from Tennessee, and I kept checking the temperature, and it was 33 degrees, but the snow was coming down pretty hard. And as soon as it would hit the wings were warm, so it wouldn't make ice. And so I asked the boys inside, I said, how about I put the de-icer truck out there by the wing, so if when we get ready to go, we need to be de-iced, we'll be set to do that. And finally Neil Diamond showed up, and they were loading all the bags, and I didn't see him, but this guy walked up and stood between me and the co-pilot and said, hi guys, I'm Neil. I don't like flying in bad weather. I turned around and looked at him and smiled and said, hi Neil, I'm Howard, I don't either. And I introduced him to the other boys. And this is Butch, who was my co-pilot at that time, and John, who was my flight engineer, and he had already met the flight attendants. So he said, well, what about this snow? I said, okay, I've checked this out, And before we leave, I'm going to walk around the airplane and make sure there's no ice on the wings. Right now there is no ice. And if there's any ice or any signs of ice, we're going to de-ice it. And there's the de-icer truck standing by. He said, well, how long are we going to be in this stuff? I said, about 3 minutes. The tops is 6,000. So he said, okay, let's do that. And we took off. And of course, I busted out those clouds at 6,000 feet, climbing about 4,000 feet a minute, and he thought that was pretty neat. So, but it seemed like on every day that we flew, we had some sort of a weather problem that I had to explain it to him. But as long as you explained it to him, and you kept him informed, and you didn't fly him in any bad weather, you were in good shape. But one time we were in we were in Wichita, Kansas, and it was pouring down rain, and I'd been checking the weather early in the morning. We were scheduled for takeoff at 11 to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, with his crew. And so I saw the front was coming through, and by the time 11 o'clock it would come through Wichita, but it wouldn't be through Tulsa. So I checked what time we would pass through Tulsa, and I figured our time schedule that we could take off after the front got through Wichita and then Tulsa. And I called him up and said, Neil, you could call up if you had. He had certain people that could get through to him, to his hotel. So I called him up. He said, what about this weather? I said, it's raining right now, but it's going to clear off. And it won't be clear, but this weather will move out. And I said, it'll be moving out of Tulsa, and let's delay our takeoff until 2 o'clock. He said, yeah, that'll work. I said, no, we're going to have to use our radar, go around some of this rain. And I promise you, if it's raining in Tulsa, we won't land. We'll hold out in the clear weather till it clears up. Well, when we got to Tulsa, it was still raining just a little bit, but I could see it would clear up pretty soon. And they wanted to clear us for an approach, and I said, Tulsa approach, can you give us a holding pattern? That'll take up about 10 minutes. He said, yeah, you boys make a racetrack pattern out there with 10-mile legs. And we slowed down to about 160, and we got in that holding pattern. And I came around on the next line was lining up with the runway. We were 5 miles out, and you could see the runway, but it was still wet. And I said, okay, we'll take an approach, and they cleared us for an approach. We landed straight in, and with a wet runway, you can put the tires down, you don't hear that squeak. So we landed on that runway with the sunshine and a wet runway, and he couldn't hear the tires squeak. So he thought that was pretty neat. So that's the way that tour went.
And then you also understand you had Michael Jackson as one of your passengers.
Actually, yes. We flew Michael Jackson 4 months into Europe on a special tour. And we went to 10 different countries and 30 different cities. And this tour you get in a town like London, you'd be there 4 or 5 days. So, and my wife flew over on Piedmont at that time. Piedmont Airlines was fly serving London, and she joined me there. And of course, I had my hotel room, and I had an American Express credit card for all my food. But when we would go out to eat, I would always have them to just charge half of it, and I would pay the other half. I wanted to be honest with my good company. And so we played London, and then we went to Italy. He played Rome, Italy, and we were there about 4 days. He played like 3 nights. He was very popular, and he was a very nice young man to fly at that time. He hadn't had his surgery on his wings. He was still what I call a purple brown color, and he was a regular friend of mine. So we went to serve a place called Torino, Italy, which the American pronunciation is Turin. And when we were there about 3 days, I told the stewardesses, I said, let's go find the cathedral where they have the Shroud of Turin. So me and my flight attendants went to this place where the shroud is, but they don't have it on display because they didn't put it out at night. But they have a replica of it in the museum. So I bought 2 books. One I paid $15 for, the other I paid like $3 or $4 for. And so I put those in my flight bag. The next day we were going to Vienna, Austria, and Michael came up. He wanted to come up and sit with us. So he sat behind me, and he said, "Howard, what you do in Turin?" Or he called it Torino. I said, "Well, we went to the cathedral where they have this route." And he said, "You did?" He said, "Did you see it?" I said, "No, we didn't see it, but we saw it." He said, "I wish I had known that I'd gone with you." I said, "If you do anything like that again, I'll call your hotel." Well, we never did have another opportunity to do anything that dramatic. So I thought, well, I'll just give him my book. I reached in my bag and got the $15 book that I bought in the cathedral. I said, "I'm going to give this book away." He thought that was really cool. He said, "I want to give you a book." So he gave me a book of what he called Moonbook. And the crown, I didn't ask him to autograph it. I wish I had it, but we didn't. And the other crew members wanted to have pictures made with him, and I said, "Let's just wait. He'll come." And later on, he had pictures made with all of us. So that was a very, very good tour.
Okay.
And we had a thing with him. He said, "Howard, you must not fly me in bad weather." And I said, "Well, Michael, you know you're here in London. It rains around here a lot." And he said, "Well, if there's any bad weather, you let me know." So one morning we were supposed to go to Hanover, Germany. It was an hour and 20-minute trip in that jet. And it was raining, but it wasn't hard rain. It was light rain. Wasn't it? You know, around here you wouldn't think much about it. But he was worried about it. And I called him and I said, "It's raining here, Michael." And he said, "What's it doing in Hanover?" I said, "It's clear over there. Once we cross over into mainland of Europe there, it's clear." He says, "How's the channel?" I said, "Well, it's not quite clear over the channel." He said, "I've got a guy, but I'm going to ride in that limousine, that Rolls-Royce limousine down to the coast and ride the ferry." So it took him 18 hours to get to Hanover. It took us an hour and a half. So that was a good story. But another thing, he asked me one time, he picked up my southern accent. He said, "Howard, where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from down North Carolina." He said, "Well, what do you do for fun during your time off?" I said, "I got some cows. I like having beef cows. And I got to look at them when I'm off on trips like this." And he said, "Boy, that's neat." He says, "I've got animals out in California because he's got snakes and things like that." So, but he was cool with that. And so that's the kind of conversation we had. And then one time we were in Sweden, and they had made arrangements for Michael and his whole group to go to a place where it was kind of like Six Flags over Georgia or Carowinds, and they had roller coasters or cars, stuff like that. Well, he wanted to go there, but he wanted the whole crew to go, and they asked us, and they got 2 buses, and they took us all out there. And my wife was with me because she had ridden in there on the airline, and she couldn't ride with us when we supposed to. And he saw us, he said, going around in bump cars. And then we got on a roller coaster, Lois and I did, and we rode about 3 seats behind Michael. He liked riding that roller coaster in the front seat. I thought he don't want to ride around in the rain, but he'd get on this old rattly old roller coaster and got first. A crazy ride. And so I got to know him pretty good, and he said, "Howard, I see your wife is with you on some of these layover." Said, "Now, if you want to take us on her with us, it's all right." And I had thought that through, and I said, "Michael, thanks a lot, but our company policy is not to mix up family members with our customers." He said, "Well, anytime you need to, you let me know." So he did offer. But if I had done it, the other crew members would have felt like they needed to also. So we got through that.
Well, Howard, you certainly have had a
Everybody in the country came in, and didn't your dad and Jimmy and maybe you were involved with the Miller grocery store?
That's correct. My dad had in Mooresville, right across from where the senior citizen center is now, was a Miller's Market, and he was very successful at that Miller Market. And a lot of people in Mooresville at that time did not have cars, and they lived down near the Mill Village, and if they wanted to go to town, they walked to town. So they ordered groceries by telephone, and then we had to deliver those groceries on a bicycle or a pickup truck. And they tried to get as much done on the bicycles using the twin boys when we were like 13 and 14, delivering groceries. Because we had a basket up on the front wheel, and the little wheel, we had a big basket, and you had a basket behind. So you could deliver several families with one trip. And my twin brother and I did that. And then one day when I was 15 years old, my brother-in-law, Bob Linker, who worked there at that time, my dad had died, said, "Boys, we don't have anybody to drive the pickup. The boys just delivered in that pickup." So we started delivering groceries at 14. And we did that until we got on to there. So that was a good experience, and we learned to cut meat and work there. So that was good. But I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do as a lifetime career. Hal and I and Jimmy all had leaned toward aviation. And I think Hal and I maybe a little more than Jimmy to start with, because Jimmy's experience with aviation, he had a private pilot license when the war started, and he enrolled in a newly organized organization called Civil Air Patrol. Well, the purpose of the Civil Air Patrol in World War II was patrol the coast to look for German submarines, because the Navy and the Air Force didn't have enough airplanes or blimps to do that job. So they got all these little airplanes from all over the state. Here in North Carolina, they were based in Manteo, and they flew out of there. In South Carolina, they flew out of Beaufort, South Carolina, and Jimmy flew some of those Coast Patrol planes, and looking for the subs in the sea lanes. In the daytime, you could see a sub if you were looking straight down, but at night, the subs couldn't see the ships because they were blacked out. So they were safe at night, but when they would come around the Cape out there of North Carolina, the subs would hang around there because they knew they would be close there. And my uncle, who ran a service station across the road here, was Marvin Overcash. He was also there in one of those pilots. And Marvin's wife was there. She became like a communications person who would keep in touch with them by radio. And if they saw anything, they would report it. They would have to report in every 30 minutes or so. And Marvin was, and his co-pilot was Rhonda Story from Lenoir, North Carolina, told to go out and patrol the sea lanes, and there'd be one ship out there that just circle around, make sure there's no subs. And he said as the sun was coming up, they always took off before daylight. He said as the sun was coming up, he saw that ship. He said, "Well, there it is." And so they began to fly toward that ship, and Marvin said, "The closer we got, the smaller it got." And it was a submarine that was going down under the water. And they realized, well, that's a submarine. I think all the time they were there, that's the only one they saw. But the threat of that, having those planes there, the Germans knew they were there. They wouldn't come up in the sea lanes. But that one did at night, and he was going to get that one. He was going to get a ship if he could. Well, Marvin and Rhonda saw it, and they did carry a 100-pound bomb. That's what the bomb. So they reported back to communications in Manteo with Marvin's wife Holly that we spotted this German sub. We're going to make a run on it, drop our bomb, to see what we can do. And they're positioned at the headquarters there in Manteo. It's called the to come out and leave those boys after they dropped their little 100-pound bomb. Well, they made a run on the sub, and they dropped it. Where it hit right behind the sub. It didn't hit the sub, but it hit right behind it, and it damaged the rudder. And then the Germans couldn't control their submarine like they were supposed to. They were kind of going around and around. And Marvin was seeing all this from Marvin and Rhonda was seeing this from their little airplane. And they were reporting back what they were seeing. And the Navy came out and the P.B. Wyatt made a run on it and sank it. So they got credit for actually spotting and sinking that airplane. They both, as civilians, received the Air Medal, which was only supposed to be presented to military people. But they were like a branch of the military. So he got the Air Medal before he was ever went into service. Marvin later on went into service as a clerk in a supply room, because that's what he did. He was a supply clerk when he ran the service station here. And I asked him one time, I said, Marvin, did you put your Air Medal on or wear it? He said, no. I said, I never had even been overseas. I didn't wear it. But that Air Medal now is in the museum down at Medio. So that's a good story about that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Howard, for all of your stories and for allowing us to come and interview you and learn all about your life as a pilot with what used to be Piedmont Airlines.
It's been my pleasure. My friend and I love Piedmont Airlines. And Hal used to say, isn't it wonderful we've got a job where we just can't wait to go to work.
That's wonderful.
We grew up in a little town where most people didn't want to go to work. And I remember in that old cotton mill, there was so much cotton flying around, you couldn't see it just about, and that was our job, to sweep the floor. But that's what we bought the first airplane with, that money we made there, 1943.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you. And it's been a